and associated disorders, its directors and employees assume no responsibility for the accuracy, completeness, objectivity, or usefulness of the information presented on our site. We do not endorse any recommendation or opinion made by any member or physician, nor do we advocate for any treatment. You are responsible for your own medical decisions. I'm going to turn over the introductions of our speaker to Martha Butterfield, the program coordinator of NJCTS. Marty?
Kelly, thanks, and good evening, everyone, and welcome. Before I introduce tonight's presenter, I'd like to call your attention to the slide on your screen promoting our April 14th walk at Ramapo College in New Jersey. For those of you who live in or are neighboring New Jersey, I hope you will join us for a walk to promote TS awareness. Additionally, if you joined late and missed the opening slides, I'd like to remind everyone about a couple of things that have a May 1st deadline. Scholarship applications for graduating high school seniors who are New Jersey residents and are going on to either college or trade school. Also, you can nominate your child's teacher as Educator of the Year or your child's doctor as Medical Professional of the Year if you think they have made a difference in the life of a child with Tourette. Last but not least, registrations for our family retreat camp, Camp Bernie 2013, are due by May 10th. Information and registration for all of these events are on our website. Thanks everyone for your patience, and it's now my pleasure to introduce our presenter for tonight, Dr. Stephen Tobias. After graduating from Hobart College in upstate New York, Dr. Tobias completed his graduate work in New Jersey, receiving his master's in psychology from Kane College and his doctorate in school psychology from Rutgers University Graduate School of Applied and Professional Psychology. Dr. Tobias worked for many years at Morristown Memorial Hospital, conducting evaluations, parent training workshops, and family therapy. He is currently the director of the Center for Child and Family Development in Morristown, New Jersey, which is a multidisciplinary evaluation and treatment center. In addition to his work there, Dr. Tobias consults to a number of private schools. He has also co-authored several books, including Emotionally Intelligent Parenting and Social Problem Solving, Interventions in the Schools. His areas of expertise include attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, anxiety disorders, and family therapy. Dr. Tobias, welcome. We're delighted to have you join our webinar family, and without further introduction, I'm going to turn tonight's presentation over to you.
Thanks very much, and it's really my pleasure to be here. I'm going to talk about a systematic approach to parenting, because to be honest with you, most of the time parenting actually isn't that difficult. Most parenting occurs by emotion, which certainly is understandable, because you love your children. So it's easy to respond to them, in an emotional way, because that's the primary bond, that's the primary nature of your relationship with them. So because you love your children, when they do something good, it makes you feel good, so then you make them feel good, and then whatever they did, they tend to do again. And if they do something bad, it makes you feel bad, so then you make them feel bad. You yell at them, take something away, reprimand, criticize them, so they feel bad, and then they stop doing it. So most kids actually respond to this model of parenting. So no matter what parenting books people read, when you have kids who respond to this model, everything works. Okay. The problem is when this model doesn't work. Some kids don't respond to this model, or there's greater stress within the home. Because of the greater degree of emotion within the home, it usually interferes, with really this model working. It's not uncommon for some kids with Tourette syndrome to not respond to this model due to the high degree of stress within the home, or also because of some of the other problems that are associated with Tourette syndrome. Things like attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, anxiety or obsessive compulsive disorder, self-esteem issues that are sometimes associated with this, learning disabilities, depression, or social isolation with the kids. So because of these factors, not the Tourette syndrome itself, this is what can make parenting these kids much more difficult. And this is why you can't always parent by emotion. You know, another way of thinking about this is that, believe it or not, there's some kids that you can parent with your eyes. You know, you just kind of give them a look, and that's all it takes, and they kind of get it, and, you know, it's either a look of approval or if it's a look of disapproval, and that's all it takes, okay? There are other kids that you have to parent with your whole body. You have to actually sometimes get up and move. And it's those kids that I'm going to be talking about tonight, the kids that, you know, you can't just parent with your eyes. Also, generally, there are two ways of parenting kids who are more challenging or more difficult. There's the hard way of parenting them, and then there's the harder way of parenting them. Okay, I apologize that tonight I'm not going to give you the easy way of parenting kids like this, because unfortunately there is no easy way of parenting kids like this. So having a systematic approach to parenting, I just want to reassure you, is just the hard way. Okay, but you know, a lot of times, you know, if you're still trying to parent by emotion, that ends up becoming the harder way of parenting them. So I apologize that the things I'm going to go over are still, you know, difficult and hard to do, but it certainly beats the alternative. Now, by systematic parenting, I mean approaching parenting in a very thoughtful, organized, and deliberate manner, rather than being reactive to them, you know, emotionally or, you know, by impulse. You really need to look at parenting these kids as actually more like a job. You know, at work, you know, you just don't react emotionally to things. You know, if, you know, there's a problem, you don't just end up, you know, kind of like screaming at your boss or your coworkers. Hopefully not, anyway, because then you probably aren't going to keep your job very long. But, you know, since your kids aren't going to fire you, you could scream at them all you want, but it's just not going to work. So, you know, we can't just, you know, yell at them, and you can't just increase your emotion to them. And also, by the way, you can't just love them. That isn't going to be enough. You've got to have strategies. You've got to have techniques. You've got to, as I said, really approach them in a very thoughtful and deliberate way. You know, it's like the kid does this, I do that. The kid does this, I do that. You have to have different procedures, strategies, ways of dealing with kids, and to do this in a very deliberate and systematic way. Another problem with this in general, and what makes this you know, the hard way, by the way, is, well, it's not that big a deal. If you have a difficult kid, you just have to be a perfect parent. I hope some of you are laughing about that, because obviously there's no such animal as a perfect parent. But unfortunately, I'm not kidding. You have to kind of like be as perfect as you can. You can't afford to be sloppy in your parenting. And by sloppy, I mean you can't afford to be inconsistent. You can't afford to, you know, say something and then not follow through with it. You can't afford to, you know, sort of like mix your strategies, you know, in terms of how you're dealing with this. You can't afford also to be inconsistent with the caregivers, you know, whether it's, you know, a dad and a mom, whether it's a grandparent, you know, or other caregivers. Everybody's really got to be on the same page in terms of working with the kid and utilizing these strategies. And that certainly, you know, as I said, makes it more difficult, because when we come home, you know, the last thing in the world we want to do is to, you know, keep working. Well, but unfortunately that's what you're going to have to do. Now, the first thing that we're going to talk about, you know, in terms of systematic parenting, is how you build a family. And you build a family like a house. You build it from the ground up. All right, next slide, please. All right. When you're building a house, you start with the land. Now, you as an individual are the land. You know, if there are mudslides, earthquakes, you know, you can't build a house. The land has to be stable and secure before you can build the house. So if you're not stable and secure, if you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not doing things for yourself, and the earth keeps shifting and shaking, you know, you can't build this house. One of the greatest risk factors for kids is actually maternal depression. Now, I'm not pointing that out to the moms to make you feel, more guilty than you already do, but it's a reality. But the meaning of that is that you have to take care of yourself, because I don't have to tell you this, that parenting is all about giving. You're giving, giving, giving. Well, if you're depressed, or you're just giving and never getting replenished, the well runs dry. Eventually there's nothing left to give, and that's bad for your kids. So you literally can't sacrifice yourself for your children. It's a parental reflex, by the way, to be willing to sacrifice for yourself for your children. And when the Titanic is sinking and there's one seat left on the lifeboat, then yes, definitely, it's okay. You can sacrifice yourself for your children. But on a day-to-day basis, it really doesn't work. And by the way, I'm telling you this as a child psychologist. I always tell parents, like, you could be as miserable as you want. I really don't care. Unfortunately, it's going to be bad for your kids. So even though it goes sort of like against parental instinct to take care of themselves, maybe before their children, sometimes you have to do that. Sometimes you have to make sure that you're okay, before you can really make sure that your kids are going to be okay. So the first thing that we want to do is to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. Make sure that you have a life outside the home, that you have friends, you have things that make you feel good that are outside the home. For some people, this is their job, or a hobby, or friends that they have as individuals outside the home. Okay? So we always want to start with the land. We always want to start with yourself, prioritizing yourself, making sure that you're okay, even before we can start looking at the children. Okay, next slide. Now, on top of the land, we obviously build a foundation, and that's the marriage. Another big risk factor for kids is parental conflict. The interesting thing about divorce is that divorce in of itself is relatively neutral on kids. The crucial variable is parental conflict. So if parents are together and in conflict, it's bad for kids. Well, if parents get divorced and they're still in conflict, it's also bad for kids. So it's very important for children that there be a strong foundation to the family, and that's the marriage. So it's important that the couple, I call it, continue to date, continue to go out on a regular basis, have time to be together as a couple, have time to spend with one another, talking about things other than the children. Because what often happens in a marriage is that once you have, careers and houses and kids, a lot of the communication between the couple, is really about problems. Problems with the house, with the kids, with, the job, with responsibilities. And then communication, unfortunately, becomes aversive. In other words, every time the couple talks together, it's about a problem. And nobody likes talking about problems. And so then what do? You avoid talking until you have to talk because there's another problem. And then, what happens? It reinforces that whole idea of communication being aversive. So it's very important that the couple has time together outside the home and outside, the children, and really continue to kind of take care of themselves, okay, and to attend to the marriage, to take care of the marriage. Because if the foundation isn't thick enough, if there are cracks in the foundation, you really can't build a house. Then on top of the, secure, stable land and the thick foundation, that's when we build a house, okay? And that's the children. The children like the building, all right? But I just want to point out to you that the sequence is self-marriage children, not children marriage self. You need to start with yourself, making sure you're okay, that you're stable, attending to the marriage, and then you take care of the kids. One of the things that makes this difficult, by the way, is actually that for the first time in human history, the nuclear family is relatively isolated from the community. The cliche, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, unfortunately, that's true. And even more unfortunately, the village isn't there anymore. In times past, the village was there. The parents weren't solely responsible for child rearing. There were, grandparents around, aunts, uncles, community members who shared in child rearing responsibilities so that people had time for themselves. people had time for their marriage, it wasn't always about the kids. So I think one of the other problems that we're having is that we've become too much of a child-centered society. The parents are sacrificing themselves and their marriage for their kids. You know, just look at a kid's sports schedule, all right? And when the kid's sports schedule sort of starts taking over the family, that's not good for anybody in the family, including the child, by the way. So we always want to maintain this balance, as I said, between self-marriage and children. One way of assessing whether this is balanced or not is to look at the family calendar. You know, this is a good way to assess, you know, is there balance in your family? Now go to your family calendar and look at how many times you as an individual are on the calendar. Look how many times your marriage is on the calendar, and look at how many times your children are on the calendar, okay? And that'll give you an idea whether, you know, there's balance in your family or not. And if you're not there and the marriage isn't there, I'd consider, you know, not penciling you in, I'd put it in ink, okay? You know, because it really needs to be there. Now, I just want to say a word about single parents. That parenting, you know, kids, you know, difficult kids or under challenging circumstances, it is hard enough. Doing it as a single parent, you know, definitely makes it even harder. But the point here, though, is that, you know, if you are a single parent, you still need that support. You still need that foundation. You still need other people to rely on, to work with, to bounce ideas off of, to support you, you know, to really connect with, you know, other than your children, okay, and sometimes other than your job. So if you are a single parent, you know, I know all this stuff certainly is more difficult, but then it's also important, you know, that you seek out the, you know, the support from others that, you know, maybe you're not getting from, you know, from a spouse. Okay. So after, you know, we've taken care of ourselves, we've taken care of our marriage, make sure we're devoting time, you know, to our spouse, time to talk together, time to go out to really have a relationship outside that of the children, then we can begin looking at the kids, okay? Now, when we're looking at the kids, next slide, please. Kids need positive attention, all right? You're not going to punish a kid into compliance. You know, you're not going to just, you know, reprimand them, yell at them, take things away from them, criticize them. Kids need positive attention. And they're going to get attention one way or the other. One of the problems with, you know, with kids that are more challenging to parent is that they don't discriminate between positive and negative attention. Any form of attention is reinforcing. So that's why sometimes, you know, if you're, you know, hugging, kissing, yelling, screaming, scolding, praising, it doesn't matter. It's all attention to the child. And attention and you know, love by connection is really, it's a basic need of life. Babies in orphanages in the early 1900s, by the way, used to die not from lack of food, shelter, and clothing, but literally from lack of attention. You know, nobody held them, talked to them, you know, sort of cared for them. Their basic needs were met, but that connection, that human connection, wasn't there, and they didn't survive. So we always want to start out by making sure that kids are getting the positive attention that they need. Because as I said, if they're not getting this positive attention, nothing else is going to work. So the first strategy that we're going to use with kids is to make sure that they're getting special one-to-one time. And there are a couple of rules about this. It only needs to be for about 15-20 minutes at a time. If you could do it on a daily basis, that's great. If you could, you know, do it a couple of times a week, that's okay. And by the way, doing it for 15-20 minutes several times during the week is much better than, you know, doing it 10 hours over a weekend. Because I'm sure you know that kids aren't great at delaying gratification. They're not good at waiting for what they want. So if they're not going to wait for what they want, they're going to end up getting that attention one way or the other. So we want to make sure that they're getting it, you know, but in a positive way. So when we're giving this special time, it's one-on-one. The other kids can't be involved in it. It's got to be uninterrupted, so the phone rings, you can't answer it. The other siblings can't interfere with it. It's got to be undivided attention. I remember when my kids were little and they'd say, "Daddy, come play with us, and don't bring the newspaper." Because I could easily, multitask and read the newspaper while I was playing Candyland with them, but, that wasn't what they needed from me. They needed my full undivided attention, all right? We want to make sure that it's positive, so this is not teaching time. If you're doing a coloring activity with the kid, you don't say, "Ooh, make sure you go in the lines, oh, why don't you put a little red over here?" If you're having a catch, you don't say, "Keep your eye on the ball, bring your arm back, follow through." All right, this is not time to teach them. This is just time to have fun with them, okay? Because if it's not fun, the kid's not going to feel loved. I'll get back to that in a second. Just one more rule about the special time is that there are no screens involved. No video games, TV, things like that. Because if there's a screen involved, the attention is on the screen, not on each other. So you could play a game, a board game, a card game like that, take a walk, a bike ride, have a catch, a craft activity, things like that are fun, are good. If it takes longer than the 20 minutes, by the way, leave it set up, because that gives the kid the message that, oh, we're going to do this again, okay? Now, as I said before, it's very important that this activity be fun. Parents often don't value fun enough, okay? Because fun is the basis of any loving relationship. And I can prove this to you in two ways. Before I was talking about the importance in the marriage to, get outside the house. It's important for the couple, not to talk about problems all the time. It's important for the couple to have fun together. So, and the reason for this is that, think back to, when you were dating, okay? And now, did you ever date somebody that wasn't fun? The answer, hopefully, is not for long, because if you're going out with somebody and they're not fun, why would you maintain a relationship with them? So fun, as I said, is a basis of any loving relationships, whether it's between a husband and a wife or between a parent and child. Because when, your kids were babies, what did you do with them? Right? You played with them. You had fun with them. You, made them laugh. Okay? So, this is extremely important. If you're not having fun with your kids, it's very difficult for them to feel loved. And if they don't feel loved, it's going to be very difficult to discipline them. Oh, by the way, let me back up a second and let you know that most of the strategies I'm going to be talking about really apply from preschool through adolescence. This special time, by the way, lasts throughout your lifetime, all right? By the way, when my 25-year-old daughter comes home from grad school, I still make sure that I give her special time, okay? So special time and a lot of the other strategies I'm going to talk about really apply for, for all the kids through adolescence, okay? So the next thing that we want to do is praise kids for appropriate behavior. Now, I know all of you praise your kids, all right? And you know the importance of praise. But parents tend to praise reactively. What I'm asking you to do is to praise proactively. Look for things to praise. Target specific behaviors for praise. You especially want to focus on behaviors to increase that will interfere with behaviors that you want to decrease. For example, if you want to decrease messy table manners, you want to praise, them using appropriate manners. Oh, you're using your fork so nicely. Oh, I see you noticed your napkin and, and are using it. That's great. All right. Again, you can't just focus on the negative. If kids are getting lots of negative attention for their inappropriate behavior, then they're going to keep doing that to maintain the attention. So we really want to look for things to praise, target specific behaviors to praise. So you might want to praise them when they listen the first time. If you have, several kids, you want to, praise them for getting along. By the way, praise also conveys your values. Like, for example, in my family, it was very important that my two daughters had a very good relationship with one another. So, throughout their lives, and even now, they're in their 20s, we still continue to sort of praise them for getting along. And you want to, as I said, look for opportunities to praise them, because if you're looking for an opportunity, you're more likely to notice it. I remember one time I was driving in the car. My kids were little, and they were sitting, quietly in the back seat. So, targeted praise. They were sitting quietly, getting along with one another. I said, hey, you girls are getting along so well. You're sitting, so quietly back there. That's really great. I'm really, very proud of you. And then my one daughter said, well, Meg's sleeping. So at least I had the right idea, okay? So anyway, that's an example of targeted praise, trying to notice something. And actually, sometimes it's hard to notice when something doesn't happen. It's certainly easy to notice when they don't listen. It's easy to notice when the kids are fighting, but it's very important to notice when they are getting along. Another thing that you want to do is that if someone else is with the child, a teacher, a nanny, an after-school daycare, or extended day provider, when you pick your child up, you want to get a report of the appropriate behavior. You don't get a report of all the bad things the kid did. You want to get a report of all the good things the kid did, and then deliver the praise to the child. Okay, by email or later you can get the list of all the things the kid did wrong. But we certainly want to start out giving positive attention for the appropriate behavior. The next strategy that we want to apply in terms of making sure the kid is getting positive attention is empathy. Now, most parents, really don't think of empathy as a sort of a parenting strategy, even though you do empathize with your kid. You can't help it. As I was saying before, when your kid does something bad or feels bad, it makes you feel bad, right? Empathy means you feel with another person. So, if your kid's upset, you can't help being upset, all right? And so what you want to do, though, is you want to express this empathy. That parents feel the empathy, but their mistake is that they don't often express the empathy. And just to make sure that you understand what I'm talking about, in terms of empathy, let me, kind of give you an example. When you go to a funeral, right, you want to be empathetic, right? So you go to the funeral, you're on the receiving line, you say to the person, I'm very sorry for your loss, but, they're 100 years old, nobody lives forever, they had a long life, this really isn't a tragedy, you shouldn't be so upset. Now, hopefully you're laughing about that, and, you really wouldn't do that. Even if you think that, and that's all true, you're not going to say it. That's not very comforting to, somebody who's just, lost somebody dear to them. But parents say stuff like this to kids all the time. Look, I know you're upset, but you can't always get what you want, and come on now, it's not that big a deal. You have 100 other toys, and, you just have to learn how to deal with it, right? Usually the child doesn't turn to the parent and say, good point, Dad. Now that you've pointed it out to me, that you've put it in perspective for me like this, I really do feel much better, okay? All right, the kid's not going to do that, all right? We all want to feel heard and understood. We all want to, feel that our feelings are validated. Now, by the way, when you're empathizing with somebody, you're validating their feelings. You're not validating their misperception of reality. You're not saying, yeah, I understand you're so upset because this is the worst, most horrible, terrible thing that could ever happen to anyone, in existence, all right? No, it's like you're upset. You feel bad. You're disappointed. You're annoyed. You're angry, whatever it is, okay? So you can't tell somebody how to feel. If it was that easy, I'd be out of business as a psychologist. You can't just say, don't be upset. Don't be, mad. Don't be, sad about this, okay? Your feelings are your feelings. And sometimes when parents are trying to minimize the feeling, that's actually what just makes the kid even more upset. So if the kid's upset, by the way, as long as they haven't violated a rule or a command, in other words, if you say, turn off the television and the kid, throws a fit, I don't think I would empathize with them. But by the way, if you walk over, turn off the TV, and then the kid throws a fit, then maybe I would, empathize with them, okay? Because, if you give a command, it's important that the kid follow through. But as I said, if the kid's upset, they're upset. And a lot of times when the emotional level is high, all you could do is really empathize with the child, validate their feelings, let them know that they're being heard and understood, and that helps the emotional level come down. Okay? By the way, this strategy of empathizing and not sort of problem solving or not minimizing or putting in perspective is also good for the marriage too, by the way. All right, so when people are talking, all right, adult to adult, even adults just want to feel heard and understood and have their feelings validated. I'll get to problem solving at the end, and that's actually a matter of timing. But when the emotional level is high, that's not the time to problem solve. All right, that's like going to another funeral, going to the receiving line and saying, I'm very sorry for your loss. So you're thinking about selling the house? Real estate prices are good now; they're coming up. All right. That's not the time to problem solve, all right? Maybe a year later you might, but not at the funeral. So again, when the kid's, in the middle of being upset, that's the time to maybe empathize with them, not try to minimize their feelings or problem solve with them. So these three strategies of special time, targeted praise, and empathy are kind of like a prerequisite. This is necessary but not sufficient. As I've been saying, if the child's not getting positive attention for appropriate behavior, nothing else is going to work. Okay? But now let's talk about what to do if the child's misbehaving. What are you going to do if there's a problem? Okay? We're going to go over three techniques here: ignoring natural and logical consequences and timeout. Now, a lot of you are probably familiar with these strategies, okay, so I'm just going to kind of like go over them. But you want to think about it in this sequence. First, you're going to ask yourself, can I ignore it? If you can ignore it, great, it stops there. If you can't, you'll try to think of a natural logical consequence. If you can't do that, then you'll default to timeout. But I'd always rather do less rather than more when it comes to parenting, okay? As I said before, parenting kids like this is really hard enough, all right? So if we can ignore it, in a sense, do nothing, and that solves the problem, great, all right? It's going to be much easier for you. Although I want to give a warning here, ironically enough, ignoring is the hardest of these strategies. For some reason, doing nothing is much harder than doing something. Okay. Also, by the way, just as an aside, let's say your kid's being, somebody else, like a sibling or a kid at school or whatever. Have you ever encouraged your child to ignore somebody that's bothering them? Well, have you ever tried to ignore an annoying child? It's very difficult to do. Yes, it works, okay, but look, this is very difficult for adults to do. I think it's, next to impossible, actually, for most kids to do. So I will get to problem solving, but ignore them usually isn't one of the things that I'd recommend. But for you, in terms of dealing with your kids, it can be an effective strategy. Now, there are two categories of behavior to ignore. The first are lower priority items. This is the don't sweat the small stuff, pick your battles kind of approach, because you can't address everything at once. Remember before I talked about being a perfect parent, being consistent? Well, if you give fewer commands, if you're addressing fewer behaviors, it's much easier to be consistent. Like let's say the kid's at the dinner table, and you say, don't talk with your mouth full, use your napkin, leave your brother alone, no, you can't have dessert, eat your vegetables, get back here, sit down, sit properly. All right, there's no way you can follow through with all those things. Now, maybe all those things, yes, ultimately are important, but you're going to have to prioritize them. Maybe the way the child gets along with their sibling is more important. I'll give you an example of this. That I remember one of my daughters, when she was around 8 years old, we were having dinner one night, and I happened to notice that she was sitting on the dinner table eating her dinner. The thing that I noticed was that neither my wife or I said anything about her sitting on the dinner table. Because she was never a very good eater, and our priority was eating, not sitting. We didn't care where she sat, how she sat, if she sat. As long as she was in the vicinity of the table, focused on her food, that was the important thing. So, but at age 8, I realized she was a pretty good eater at this point. We could probably, move sitting up on the priority list. So we started addressing it. And I just want to reassure everyone, she's 21 now. We could take her to a restaurant. She sits fine at the dinner table. So, okay. But again, if we're, sort of like on her about sitting and on her about eating, it's going to be, much less pleasant a meal, and we're going to be much less effective in terms of following through with things. Okay. The other thing to ignore, in addition to lower priority items, are things that the child is clearly doing for attention. This is whining, nagging, interruptions. Now, this is difficult to ignore because if the kid's doing it for attention and you ignore them, they're initially going to escalate the inappropriate behavior. Because if they're used to getting attention for it and now they're not getting attention, initially they're going to do it more. They're going to keep trying it because it worked before, and let me see if it works again. Now, if you're ignoring something that they're doing for attention, you can turn to them once and say, honey, we're talking, and, when we're done talking, then it'll be your turn. And then you turn away from the child. And don't expect they're going to sit there quietly waiting for their turn to talk. No, they're probably going to continue to interrupt. But then when, you're finished talking to whoever you're talking to, then you can turn to the child and say, okay, what was it that you wanted to say? But as I said, be prepared and ride out the escalation, okay? So, but that's our first line of defense, is to ignore the inappropriate behavior. Now, if you can't ignore the inappropriate behavior because it's a high priority item, or you just can't ignore it, then you want to try to think of a natural or logical consequence. Next slide, please. All right, a natural and logical consequence basically is the way the world works. If you go outside without a coat on, you get cold. If you touch a hot stove, you get burnt. If you don't take care of your car, it breaks down. Okay, it doesn't mean you're bad. It doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. This is just the way the world works. So the natural and logical consequence, it's not you against the child. It's not you better do this or I'll do that. What you're doing is that you're just pointing out to the child the natural or logical consequences of their actions. For example, if you're playing roughly with a toy, it might break. Okay, if you don't put your clothes away, I'm not going to be able to wash them, and you're going to have dirty clothes. Okay, so you just want to sort of point out to the child, if you do this, that might happen. Parents do this all the time with, first eat your vegetables, then you get dessert. All right, that's just the way the world works. You eat the healthy stuff, then you get the other things. You finish your homework, you get to watch TV. Now, sometimes you have to be kind of creative in thinking of natural, logical consequences, really what would, be appropriate or effective in situations. So one of the strategies of natural, logical consequences is what I call the extra toys technique. The problem with some kids is that actually they've got too much stuff. By the way, the reason we had the economic recession we did recently, it's because actually people had too much stuff, too much house, too much car, too much debt. So natural logical consequences working the way they do. If you have too much of something, eventually you're not going to have it. So this applies to toys too. That some kids, they have too many toys. And the kids got too many toys is because when you ask them to put their toys away, oh, it's too much, they're too tired, they don't know where it goes, there's no room for it, etc. So what you would do is you would explain to the kid, okay, then just put your good toys away, leave the extra toys out. If you don't need it anymore or whatever, just leave it out, I'll take care of it. But make sure that if it's a good toy that you really want it, make sure that gets put away. Then after the kid goes to bed that night, you go through the house, you take all the extra toys and you put them in storage. Now, you're not going to throw them out. Some parents, threaten to do that, but very few parents, follow through. And again, this is not a threat. This is just the way the world works. Okay, so, kid goes to bed that night, you go through the house, you take all the extra toys, you put them in storage someplace. The kid comes down the next day, where's my, video game? You kind of scratch your head, you say, I think that was one of the extra toys you didn't need anymore. The kid's like, no, what do you mean? That was my favorite. Where is it? And then you sort of, act perplexed, and you say, but honey, remember I said put the good stuff away, leave the extra stuff out. You left it out. I figured you didn't need it anymore. And then you explain to the kid the way the world works is that you can have as much stuff as you can take care of. And, when you learn to take care of what you have, then you can have more. So then you do this again the next night. Don't forget, put your good stuff away, leave the extra stuff out. Next night, next night, next night. You do this enough nights in succession until the child's left with only as many toys as they can take responsibility for. Okay? So I remember one kid I worked with, that was 2 toys out of the probably, a couple of hundred he started with, he's left with 2. Then once the kid learns to take care of what they have, then they can have more. Okay? Then you can begin reintroducing some of the extra toys. Another sort of creative use of this, and I really give this family a lot of credit. They had 3 kids, and all 3 kids had difficulty getting ready in the morning and getting to school on time. So one week, the parents counted how many days that week the kids had trouble getting up, getting ready, and getting to school on time. And that determined how many times they had to practice on Saturday morning. So I think the first week was about 3 times. So Saturday morning, kids got up, got dressed, washed, came down, had breakfast, got their books bags, sat in the car. Came back in the house, back in their pajamas, back in bed. Got up, got dressed, got washed, sat at the breakfast table, got their book back, sat in the car. All right, and they did this, 3 times. All right, it probably took them till about, I think, 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, until they finally, had their sort of 3rd practice session. And then, it was really very helpful. After 2 weeks, after 2 Saturdays of practicing, the kids actually got very good at, getting ready in the morning. Okay. So, because anytime you're having trouble doing something, you got to practice. You're having trouble hitting a baseball, you got to practice. You're having trouble, with math facts, you got to practice. You're having trouble, getting up and ready in the morning, you got to practice. Okay? So that's a sort of a creative use of natural and logical consequences. Now, if you can't ignore the behavior, you can't think of a natural logical consequence, or, by the way, if you're not in the mood for a natural logical consequence, because it takes a lot of self-control sometimes, to think of them and to apply them, then you can default to timeout. Most of you are familiar with timeout. There are, lots of different ways of doing timeout. Let me just go over some basic principles of timeout. The purpose of timeout is to actually teach a child self-control. And you also want to think of it as a substitute for yelling. Because, by the way, if you're teaching a child self-control, it's always good to model self-control. This occurred to me one day when I was yelling at my daughter to stop yelling. It just didn't sound right, okay? So instead of yelling at the child, you want to, be putting the child in timeout. You tend to yell at a kid for 1 of 2 reasons. Either they do something they know they're not supposed to, that's a rule violation, the timeout would be immediate, or they don't listen, and that's noncompliance with the command. All right, and there you could give the command, then a command with a warning, and then the timeout. All right? So, let's go back to the sequence of ignoring natural and logical consequences, timeout. Let's say the kid leaves their toys out. You could ignore that. That could be a lower priority item. Maybe, getting the kid to bed on time is a higher priority item. Right now we're going to, ignore the fact that the kid didn't put their toys away. Or we'll use the natural and logical consequence. Put your good stuff away, leave the extra stuff out. Or you give the command, honey, it's time to clean up, please put your toys away. No, I'm too tired, I don't want to. Honey, if you don't put your toys away, you'll be sent to timeout. No, I don't want to. Okay, timeout. Okay? So, as I said, there are lots of different ways of using timeout. It can't be overused, okay? I just want to emphasize that. If you're giving a kid timeout 10 times a day, I honestly wouldn't be concerned. If you're yelling at the kid 10 times a day, that I would be very concerned about. Okay? Because, by the way, when you yell at a kid, what the kid hears is, I'm bad and you don't love me. Those really aren't the messages, that I know that you're trying to give the child. Okay? So, those are the primary discipline strategies, ignoring natural and logical consequences and timeout. The next thing that I want to go over is problem solving. Next slide. Okay, there are 3 main steps in problem solving, and it starts with feelings. Because feelings let you know that there's a problem. Feelings let you know that, something's wrong. Because another way of thinking about inappropriate behavior really is just ineffective problem solving. Because often what happens is that a kid's responding impulsively based on their emotion rather than really thinking through the problem situation and figuring out what to do and how to deal more effectively with the situation. Also, by the way, the feeling level has to come down. That's what I was saying before in terms of timing. You can't problem solve when the kid's very upset. You can't really problem solve during the crisis. You know, there's got to be another time and place to help the kid identify their feeling, talk about it, be aware of it, and go through the next steps of problem solving. One of the things you also want to do in terms of helping kids be aware of their feelings and to use the feeling as a cue to problem solve is to learn to differentiate their feelings. For example, 3 feelings that often get confused are anger, frustration, and disappointment. Anger comes from hurt. It's like first you get hurt, then you get angry. You know, somebody calls you a name, hurts your feelings, you get angry. You know, somebody hits you, hurts your body, you get angry. What do you do when you're angry? You know, you want to hurt something or someone else. Now, by the way, kids are rarely angry at home. You know, out on the playground, sure, they get angry. But parents, you know, generally don't hurt their kids. Right? So often, you know, when the kid is upset, they're defaulting to anger because they're not differentiating anger from their other feelings. Another feeling is frustration. All right? And frustration means you're doing something that's hard to do. As I said, when you're angry, you lash out. When you're frustrated, you either keep trying, take a break, or ask for help. Now, that's only if you're able to understand what frustration is and differentiate it from anger. The other feeling of disappointment means you don't get what you want. You know, when you're disappointed, you go, oh, well, you know, that stinks, all right, and really do nothing, all right. Kids also have difficulty, you know, understanding disappointment and differentiating it from anger and frustration. So one of the things that we want to do is to teach kids what these feelings mean, to teach them how to differentiate them, and you know, and how to cope effectively with their feelings. By the way, one of the things that you want to do when you're empathizing with the child is you do want to try to label the feeling correctly. You know, so if the kid's disappointed because they didn't get what they wanted, use the word disappointment. If the kid's frustrated with their homework because it's hard to do, use the word frustration. Okay? So once we've helped the kids, you know, be aware of their feelings and understand what it is, then we want to help them establish their goal. What is it that you want? What do you want to have happen? Next slide. Okay. A goal is what you're trying to do, what you want to have happen. Now, by the way, as I was saying before, with empathy, you can't tell somebody how to feel, nor, by the way, can you tell people what to want. Well, you know, we want what we want. Also, by the way, if you're talking the kid through the situation, you can usually agree with their goal. You can usually support what it is that they want. Now, a lot of times kids, though, have difficulty differentiating a goal from a solution. A goal is what you want to have happen. A solution is how you're going to get there. Like, for example, a lot of kids will say that their goal is revenge. You know, their goal is to get back at the other person. That's really something you could do to achieve a goal. Chances are your goal is to be left alone. You know, and by the way, if you get back at somebody, you know, what's going to happen? Then they get back at you, you get back at them, they get back at you. That certainly isn't going to achieve your goal of being left alone. So we want to help kids, you know, learn to really verbalize their goal, understand ultimately what it is that they want to have happen. What would this look like, you know, kind of like at the end? How would you like this, you know, to turn out? Okay, and as I said, then we can, you know, sort of probably support their goal in helping them get what they want. Because that's what problem solving is all about, is facilitating the kid getting what they want. All right, as I said, you can't tell somebody what to want, but you can help facilitate them getting what they want. You also, by the way, have to make sure that the goal is realistic and obtainable. All right, and you know, obviously that you agree with the goal, you know, as well, because they might want something. You know, they might want, you know, a new laptop. All right, but then, you know, that's obviously might not be an achievable goal, okay? And so certainly, you know, it's important that we set limits on kids as well. right? But then really the meat of problem solving is to come up with solutions, and that's the last step. Right? When we're helping kids come up with solutions, you want to brainstorm with them. What could you do? What else could you do? All right, like let's say, for example, you're feeling angry, at your sibling because they're, calling you names, hurting you, putting you down. Okay, what's your goal? Your goal maybe is for them to be nice to you. Your goal is for them to stop teasing you. All right, so what could you do? You could ignore them. Okay, as I said before, very hard to do. What else could you do? You could ask them to stop. Okay, what else could you do? Tell mom or dad. Okay, what else could you do? Be nice to them. Okay, what else could you do? Bribe them. What else could you do? Stop going in their room and annoying them. Okay, what else could you do? Right. One of the best indicators of social adjustment in kids, by the way, are the number of things they can think of doing to solve a problem. Not just whether the solutions are appropriate or not, but just how many things they can think of. Because human dynamics are extremely complex. There's never one right answer to a problem. And the right answer for one person might be different than the right answer for another person. So what we want to do is that we want to help kids, brainstorm, think of multiple solutions, and then talk about, is this really going to work? If your brother's, teasing you and you ignore him, gee, what's going to happen? Well, he might continue to tease you. Let's say you tell me what's going to happen. Well, I'll put him in timeout. Let's say you are nice to him. What's going to happen? Well, then maybe he'll be nice to you. Okay? So we're going to help kids sort of think through these different solutions, and what might work. Again, when we're problem solving with kids, it's often a matter of timing. During the fight is not the time to problem solve. Maybe after a timeout would be a good chance to problem solve. Maybe at a family meeting, which is a time and space separate from all the problems of the week, is often a good time to problem solve with the kid. Okay, so I apologize, rushing through the problem-solving process. It can get, kind of complex. So certainly if you have any questions about it, I'm happy to, answer some questions about that or any of the other strategies that I've talked about. But what you need to do, as I said, in taking a systematic approach to parenting, is to think about all these strategies. Think about all these things in sequence. As I said, make sure you're taking care of yourself. Make sure that there's good communication between you and your spouse. Make sure that you and your spouse or any other significant others in your life are having fun together. Don't be overly child-focused in your family. Think about special time. Make sure that the kid, feels loved by having fun with them. Target praise. Don't forget to empathize when the kid's upset. If it's an inappropriate behavior and you can ignore it, great, it stops there. Or think about natural logical consequences or default to timeout in terms of your discipline. And then finally, when you're problem solving, when you're helping kids figure out other ways of dealing with whatever problem they're facing, start with their feelings, validate those, help them come up with goals, and then together think of potential solutions for the problem. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry I hadn't switched on my microphone. Thank you very much, Dr. Tobias. A lot of great information, and we're a little pressed for time here, so I'm going to launch right into some questions that have been posted. I have a question. This one happens to be specific to Tourette, but I'm sure that there are similarities, without it being a specifically Tourette question. It has to do with, in this case, my daughter to own her Tourette's and become more of her own advocate. Right now, her daughter is reluctant to do that, and I think that applies to kids with, not just Tourette, with other issues that they're trying to deal with, and how to have them begin to step up and take some ownership. Would you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely, and there I would use the problem-solving process. Okay, I would start out with her feelings about it. How does she, feel, about this? Are there feelings of embarrassment? Are there feelings, is it impacting her self-esteem? Is it generalizing to, make her feel bad about, herself as a whole? And also empathize, with the feelings. It's like when our kids are hurting, As I said, we empathize and it makes us hurt, so we do want to take it away. But I would first, as I said, sort of linger on those feelings a little bit, validating them, empathizing with the child, getting them to verbalize it, to be aware of the feelings that they have about it. Then talk to them about what are their goals. Do they, want to have friends, and they feel that, this is interfering, with their, comfort in social situations. Do they want to be able to talk to their friends about it, or teachers to be able to, explain, what's going on and why they're engaging in these behaviors. And then once, you've agreed on a goal and what is it that they want, what they would like to have happen, then talk about solutions. What can you do? Does the child want you, to talk to somebody about this? Do they want to say something? What would they say? How would they say it? When would they say it? Part of coming up with a solution is also to develop a plan and also sometimes role play that situation. You don't want to sort of impose your solution on the child. You don't want to just tell the child, well, this is what you should do, this is how you should deal with it. Because if they're not comfortable with it, and if they don't have ownership, both, of the goal and of the solution, they're probably not going to do it, or they're not going to do it appropriately.
Yeah.
So as I said, I would look to, yeah, sorry.
Sorry, no, I thought you were finished. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so I would just follow this problem-solving process, to help the kid figure out, how they want to, sort of deal with this.
The mom doesn't say how old this child is, so of course some of what you've described depends on the age of the student. And there was a second half to that question that the mom posed, and she said that in the situation right now is that this daughter is the victim of some bullying at school, which is a whole other aspect, obviously not specific to Tourette either, but if you could kind of talk about that a little bit, because there's more going on here than just this girl being in her own advocate.
No, absolutely. Look, it's against the law now to bully. So, certainly one of the solutions there has to be to tell an adult, to, make sure that the adults at school in an aftercare program, wherever it is, that the adults take responsibility for stopping it. The other thing, though, that we want to do, as I said, is help the kid figure out how they want to deal with it. Because you could say to the kid, just ignore them, all right? As thing that's very difficult to, for any kid to do, okay? You can't just say, tell them to stop, all right? The child themselves have to be comfortable with what it is, okay? And when you're problem solving, I wouldn't leave anything out, okay? In other words, I mean, I hate to say this publicly, but sometimes hit them is the right answer. It depends on the kid. Depends on the situation and, in the circumstance, okay? But as I'm saying, if the kid's not comfortable doing it, the kid's either not going to do it or not do it properly. So, the parent might say, I want you to be assertive and just go up to the child and say, I have Tourette's and this is not my fault and, you need to stop, picking on me because of it. Yeah, that might be, an appropriate way for one kid to deal with it. But if it's not genuine to that kid, they're either not going to do it or they're not going to pull it off properly. And then the danger is then the child's not going to go back to the parent for help because, they're no help because what they told them to do, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Well, to this parent, I'd like to say that we as an organization and JCTS offer programs in schools. So if this parent wants to get in touch with us, we can talk about how we could maybe do a workshop or something at the school for the faculty and for the students, if that's an appropriate thing. And that's assuming, of course, that this is a New Jersey resident. So just wanted to kind of put that out there as well.
And by the way, that's a great idea. Support that 100% because education, to everyone, okay, teachers and students, I think, is extremely important.
Okay. Parent is asking, how do I take the emotion out of giving consequences? My son is forgetful, he loses everything, he forgets to bring home stuff. How can I help him do this and again, taking the emotion out of those consequences?
Okay, taking the emotion for the parent or the child?
Well, I think for the parent, but
Okay.
that's the way it was phrased. That's how I'm reading it, yeah.
All right, well, I'll try to answer both then. All right. Uh, I'll give you a parenting quiz that every parent fails, okay? When you have a negative emotion towards your child, when you get a bad feeling towards your kid, what do you think your most common negative emotion towards your child is, okay? Now, a lot of you are probably thinking frustration, disappointment, anger, annoyance, and those are all true, but the correct answer is worry, okay? Parents worry about their kids more than anything else. You know, when the kid's disorganized, yeah, it might be frustrating, in terms of helping them, get organized. But really, what's underlying it? You're worried. How's this child going to function in life? How are they going to, hold down a job one day? How are they going to, graduate high school with, lack of organizational skills? So we worry about our kids all the time. But from a parent's perspective, the problem is that it hurts to worry. And we don't like worrying about our kids. And then sometimes we, get angry at them, not because, we're really angry at them, but because, as I said, anger comes from hurt, and it hurts to worry about them. So parents need to be in touch with the worry. Because if you approach your child with worry, rather than anger or disappointment or annoyance, you're going to probably be much more effective in dealing with them. You're probably going to, much better at dealing with them in an effective manner, putting that emotion in check. You know what I mean? It's like, if it falls down and gets hurt, chances are you don't run up and start yelling at them, chances are you are clearly worried and you say, what's the matter? You try to sort of figure out what to do to help them feel better. Well, if you can worry more, or at least be in touch with your worry, that I think can help you keep that emotion in check. In terms of the kid, as I said before, you can't tell the kid how to feel. And there I would lead with empathy. So if the kid's upset about, the problems, and by the way, don't be fooled when kids say they don't care. They do care, okay? But kids are often very good at denial and avoidance, okay? So even if they're not manifesting a negative emotion about a problem that they're having, I can pretty much reassure you that they feel bad about it too.
Okay, great. Thank you. Have a suggestion or have a question having to do with your suggestions, ignoring and natural consequences. Would these apply to school behaviors? Can teachers apply these as well? Or is this really, are we really talking about specifically parenting here?
Oh, no, absolutely. They're general discipline techniques. In school, it becomes a little more complicated. Like if you're ignoring a child that's being disruptive, it's easier, obviously, to do at home than in a classroom if they're interfering with others' learning. Also, sometimes kids' inappropriate behavior gets attention from their peers, so if it's being reinforced by the peers, that can, maintain the inappropriate behavior. But, ignoring, mild, low-level behaviors, is certainly an appropriate strategy. I remember once I was teaching a class, and a kid cursed in the middle of the, when I was talking to him about something, okay? And a lot of the kids said, hey, he just cursed. And I said, oh, well, I didn't hear it. Even though it was very loud, because that wasn't the priority, right? And if I started, trying to deal with, the issue the kid was having and the fact that he cursed, it was just going to distract me from, the priority issue at the time, okay?
Yeah, and you would have been pulled right off what was more
right.
important, probably.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly, okay? So
but,
I chose to ignore it.
Yeah, but it's interesting about ignoring behaviors that are, and choosing your battles and all that. Is there a point at which this sends the wrong message, though? Like, how much is it okay to kind of just like, oh, look the other way?
Well, obviously if it's a very egregious or inappropriate behavior, I certainly wouldn't ignore it. It's like, if a kid's hitting another kid, I obviously wouldn't ignore that. So it depends on the severity of it. It also depends on the parent's threshold. Oh, by the way, it also depends on the parent's values.
Okay.
Like in my house, stupid was a dirty word, right? We didn't ignore the word stupid. There were other words we ignored, but stupid wasn't one of them, you know. Yeah, it also speaks to your values. So, you know, a lot of times it depends. It depends on the kid, the circumstances, the values of you know, of the family. There is, I have to say, as systematic as I've tried to outline, you know, this approach to parenting, there is still some trial and error involved. You know, and if you're ignoring a behavior and that's not stopping it, then certainly do something else.
Okay. I noticed when I was looking at your bio that you have done some work in the area of toilet training problems, and we actually have a question about that. So it's not a unique question, but I'm sure this is one that shows up for a number of parents.
Right.
But the question is, what would you recommend to help a preschooler who continues to have potty accidents at nearly kindergarten age? It's a little off your talk, but I think it's very relevant.
Well, if you give me another hour, I'll be happy to answer that question.
We may have to do a whole nother webinar on that topic, right?
Right. Well, it's usually an anxiety disorder. Usually it's actually a fear of the toilet, or it's a fear of defecating. And you have to, you know, address the underlying anxiety, you know, in the child, okay? And by forcing the kid to, you know, go to the toilet, that just usually exacerbates the anxiety. The other problem is that one of the interesting things about toileting is that I don't think there's any other problem that makes a parent feel more inadequate as a parent, you know, than when they can't get the kid to, you know, poop in the potty. So between the kid's anxiety about it and the parent's anxiety about it, it can be a tough issue to address. So that's why, rather than give an inadequate answer to that question, you know, I'd rather sort of say, you know, I'm happy to come back and kind of give you the whole procedure.
Okay, thank you. I didn't mean to blindside you with that. It was funny that
okay.
The question just kind of popped up.
Well, you know, people ask me simple questions all the time that have very complex answers.
Yes. We've run well over. I'm going to ask you one more question, and then we'll wrap it up with this. In terms of the things you suggest, getting buy-in from family members, including extended family, is not easy. So can you just address that a little bit on some of the suggestions or hints you can give someone who's trying to implement some of these strategies and not getting the support they need?
Well, the first thing that I would say is that if adults in the family have different approaches to parenting, that's a strength, not a weakness. You know, the more ways you have of looking at a problem, the better chance you have of solving it. So really what I would do is that I would use, again, the problem-solving model. You know, I'm pretty sure that, you know, all adults, you know, whether it's, you know, father to mother, grandparent, you know, whoever it is, you know, is worried, is concerned, you know, feels, you know, upset about what the behavior is. So I would always start out by, you know, talking about, you know, the adult's feelings about the problem, and maybe getting everybody to see that they kind of like share the same feelings about that. The next thing to do is to make sure that there's consensus around the goal. You know, what is it that's important? What are we trying to do? You know, and as I said, I think there can be consensus, you know, around the goal about, you know, look, we all want, you know, the kid to get his homework done. You know, we all want him to, you know, stop having temper tantrums, or to, you know, speak in a more appropriate manner, be respectful, you know, to other adults. You know, I don't think, you know, I've never seen it that the adults in the child's environment really disagree on the overall goals. You know, the problem is in the solutions. All right, what are we going to do? Again, here, we want to brainstorm. You know, should we use timeout? Is there a natural logical consequence? Are we going to ignore it? You know, should we yell at the kid? All right? All right, and then, as I said, there's some trial and error. Okay, well, let's try something and see how it works. You know, often what I'll do is, you know, if there's really intransience, you know, one parent thinks, no, this is it, this is the way we got to do it, this is going to work, I'll say, okay, let's try it for a week, all right, and then we'll see if it works. and then if it works, great, okay, we solved the problem. If not, all right, let's try something else. And by working, I mean that it stops the behavior. If the kid's doing something and you're yelling and the kid does it again, you yell again, the kid does it again, you yell it again, at a certain point, it's got to dawn on you that this isn't working. This isn't helping us, achieve our goal of getting the child to change their behavior. So I think that if you get everybody to work together in problem solving the situation, we have a much better chance of, getting agreement.
Yeah, of having success. Well, you had a lot of great information tonight. Thank you very much. We appreciate your time, and this is going to wrap it up for us for tonight. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for joining us on our webinar, A Systematic Approach to Parenting. There is an exit survey which we need everyone attending to fill out. The discussion board is now open and available for the next 7 days on the NJCTS website for any additional questions that were not covered in tonight's presentation. That website is www.njcts.org. Also, an archived recording of tonight's webinar will be posted to our website. Our next presentation, iSocial Skills, will be presented by Dr. Graham Hartke and is scheduled for April 24th, 2013. This ends tonight's webinar. Thank you, Dr. Tobias, for your presentation, and thank you, everyone, for attending. Good night.